Happy Saturday! How's it going, Rage and Pseudo? I hope you're better than your video.
It's going. It's going. We're experiencing frame rate deficiency this weekend.
I'm not sure why.
Great.
OBS.ninjas. Yeah. You guys are like 3 FPS. Just pretend that Rage and Pseudo are, I forgot the name of the system, an Amiga game. That's about what you look like as an Amiga game in this
It's
movement.
very still,
A frame,
and then you won't notice.
every once in a while.
Yeah, just don't move and nobody can tell. Sit perfectly still as you talk. Can't do
We'll
it,
just
can
sit
ya?
there and when you're talking, I just open your mouth.
Yeah, you leave the mouth open so that no one can see the lips now, and you'll be okay, right? Yeah, it's okay.
Sound like Terrence. From Terrence and Phillip.
Well, you know, I am Canadian.
Hey,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
let's whistle boot. Going out for a rip.
So, we got a decent skill system there, eh? And I think we're okay with moving forward with that one. So,
Yeah, for the most part, eh?
So I think we need to decide on a new system to work on today. Where do we want to go?
I think it's coming together pretty well. Have we done a full stat ideation?
That's what
yet?
we were touching last time. Is stats on
Like, I know we were talking
what?
about stat interactions.
a little bit. So we got down to we did the current needs, loot. Okay, design problem with other systems. Where'd the
You put it in a different doc.
apparently? Oh yeah. So here's the P&P skills system. Buy him. Okay. And then we had another one working on what we need. So the needs are character stats. We need the stits and the stats. Attack basics, character abilities, magic, classes, leveling and progression, movement, combat, creating enemies, crafting question mark. We can start at stats.
That's what I was thinking, because we just finished up like how we're going to interact, so we might as well set up the baseline for those interactions.
Yep. That's kind of what I'm thinking too. Also, it's right there for a reason because we knew it would need to be done soon. Stats is kind of what everything else is built on. We started with the skill system because we had an idea for that. That's just kind of how it goes. Sometimes you've got this idea and you're like, let's start there. You figure it out and like, okay, yes, this will work. Then you move on, work on something else.
You start
Develop that
building
idea.
Other stuff around it.
Yeah. And hey, board, welcome. Hey, lurkers. Hope your Saturday's good. Hey, long weekend. Everyone likes long weekends, right?
Woo.
All right. Character. No, not even character. Just stats. Just stats. We need stat.
So there's a couple of different ways that we can take this. I'm sort of leaning towards a inspired by D20 way of doing it, where you have your skills that you can rank up. But I also want to steal the karma system because the karma system is awesome.
Good. We're on the same page because I absolutely want to use the karma buy system.
Yeah.
And that's why I've actually already laid it out how they organize it.
Yeah. But see, here's the thing. The way that that game with all the D6s, yes, does like stat split up. I'm not 100% sold on, if I'm honest.
That's fine.
I think it's.
I just think this is a good
little
place
complex.
to start, so that we can start understanding our own. Like our design can be complex as long as the implementation is simple.
Yeah.
Right. So I've got the complex structure here. We can simplify it as we go, but it's nice to organize it because those 3 headings I feel are pretty good headings for your base stats. Your physical stats, your mental stats, and your social stats. They're kind of the 3 main areas that are affected differently. That doesn't mean we're going to have these headings afterwards. But
it is a pretty good grouping.
It's a good, nice place to start logically. Physical stats. We need something for melee combat, I'm assuming. Maybe 2. We need like a damage reduction stat / health increase. They're the same net effect, just depending on how you want to do it. I've never been a big fan of like a level 1 having 10 hit points and a level 20 having 100 hit points. It just seems odd to me.
Takes you level 20 to get 100 hit points.
You understand what I'm saying, though? Like just this vast majority in practice and in design, the point of these hit points is like a high level character is better at, rolling with the punches. So he might get hit for as much damage, but that damage is a smaller percent of his health pool because he was able to roll, to mitigate it, to glance it off. And I never thought it represented it well.
No, not particularly. There is some user experience to be considered there when we dive a little deeper into damage reduction versus health increase, but that can stay as it is for now. Other physical stats, do we want to talk about movement, speediness, that sort of stuff under physical?
Yeah, it's definitely physically related. Agility
leg day.
/ speed / initiative type stat.
Sorry,
Stats.
Zudo, I think you said something.
He said, "Don't
said
skip
don't-
leg day."
Yeah, that's important.
What else do we usually have for that's the main 3 that you see in most games, right? In D&D, that's strength, constitution, and dexterity.
Yeah.
Some games split out speed and dexterity.
Which we could think about. Depends how things come together when we're looking at how these stats will interact with the actual skills and feats that we end up giving characters access to.
Yeah. Logistically, it makes sense. But is it just more complication than is needed? This beard is pissing me off. That's why I just grabbed one. You don't want to listen? Fine, just go everywhere.
There is something to be said for leaving the ability to have just silly builds by really prioritizing a stat that you wouldn't think to prioritize. Like, the idea for a Shadowrun character that we had where it moved so fast that it heart exploded when it hit something.
Yeah. I do love silly janky builds. I definitely like the freedom to adjust things as well. I don't know. Chat's being super quiet, and I really need some input on 1 stat or 2 for agility, speed. Pseudo?
I'd say maybe we leave it how it is for now and split it out later when we start doing like actual skills.
When we get to something where we're like, oh, we need this. But I mean, even for combat, like agility is really your or not agility, dexterity is more like fine little dexterous. Like that's what we call it, dexterous, right? Little fine things, accurate fingers. Typing on a keyboard is very dexterous. That doesn't make you fast.
It can make you faster doing those actions, though.
At those actions, yeah, but it's not going to make you move faster. Not necessarily going to be great for initiative. You're not Usain Bolt. You can just type fast. They're pretty different stats. We'll see where it goes. Mental stats.
I mean, the obvious two are intelligence and wisdom, because those are not the same thing.
Yep. Intelligence lets you make the Halloween costume. Wisdom tells you if you should wear it or not. Go away, social. You're not welcome here. I don't even know of another term for wisdom. It's just wisdom. You are wise. That is all.
I think
That is
knowledge
all.
applies to both.
No, intelligence is very much knowledge. Wisdom is usually more like common sense.
Wisdom is
Street
gained
smarts.
knowledge.
Yeah.
It's experienced knowledge. So anyways, English is hard.
Yeah, English is a terrible language. We'll agree on that. As far as mental stats, are we thinking we want this system to be able to like handle, say, a psionic style of character? Or do we want to leave that up to the implementation, like the person who ends up running a game in this system?
We could add wit, because wit can be kind of general.
I see wisdom as wit. Personally. That's why we were kind of saying, like, you know, street smarts and...
Yeah.
I am curious to see where you're going with that, though, Pseudo.
Yeah.
Wit,
Yeah.
wit was mostly just like a mental constitution. Like, how keen is your brain? How strong is your
Mental fortitude.
How is your mental resolve? Right? Like, how easily can you be broke? Because intelligence and wisdom doesn't really match into that. You can be super wise, but you can still not have a great mental resolve.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the idea of having a resolve stat. I think that would be really cool.
It opens up a lot of stuff
Willpower
for like
slash resolve. Yeah, I'm good with that.
for
Willpower is a
like,
common stat, actually.
for like intimidates and stuff like that. So you can cause someone to falter or break and not be in focus, and then status effects, especially for doing advantage disadvantage. If you break someone's resolve, it'll put you into an advantage.
I like it.
D&D actually has ways to route troops and stuff, but it's a complex thing, and if enemies all just have a resolve slash willpower, then routing and battle confidence and stuff can actually be figured out much easier.
So onto our social stats then, I suppose.
Yeah, and this is, of course, these aren't in stone. Just so everyone knows, none of this is stone. This is developing ideas.
So the two that I'm thinking of are I need a better word for it, but like essentially prettiness and
Charisma?
Charisma isn't the same as prettiness, though.
Charisma can be pretty, but charisma can also be personality. Charisma is just a rating of your ability to influence people.
Charisma typically is kind of your ability to socially influence based off your appearance and your
Well, not just
social
appearance,
standing.
right?
Yeah,
You can be
appearance
ugly and
in
still
your
have a
pocket
high charisma just by being
is what I was saying.
convincing, right? Yeah, yeah. You were saying what I was saying at the beginning, then. Yeah. Charisma is definitely one we can look at, but that's usually everything balled up. So if you want to ball it all up into one, we can, or we can look at doing an individual physical
break it
attractiveness
down
and mental.
To communication. Communication skills just directly to your ability to speak. So we can split that typical roundup charisma into that. So you have communication. And
Wouldn't that be
then,
more a skill than a stat? Communication?
It is something that can be trained.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but don't most of our stats go up with experience?
Can. We haven't gotten there yet, but we're all thinking karma buy system already. Or at least Rage and I are.
Because yeah, I mean, like charisma is also something that you can learn and get taught. You can just be naturally better at it, and there's improvements. But you know,
So let's
it-
try
it
to
is
just try to focus on the physical aspects of the charisma then, and then the rest of it can become skill. Since stats are really supposed to be physical attributes.
Well, I mean, what we could do is rather than having a social category, have something under physical and mental to represent it.
yeah, because physical could be your appearance,
Yeah.
like attractiveness, and then mental can be your communication.
Yeah, we could add like beauty or something that
'Cause
means
you could
similar to
be-
physical.
You could be a dumb, beautiful, bastard, or you could be, an ugly, charismatic, trickster, kind of an idea. It
I
could
do
be
agree.
appeal.
I do agree
could
that
be-
social is really more of a skill set.
Yeah, if it's, yeah, because we can do appeal if we want, like a physical appeal, because then it doesn't always have to be just about beauty. It could just be,
Mhm.
it could be a little bit more abstract than that, rather than it being like you're trying to attract these people, because there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. It's not just beauty. If someone, if someone comes up to you and they're like really well built and stuff like that, you're not going to be attracted to them, but their appearance and the appeal they have will have influence over you for what they're going to do.
Yep. Yep.
Or
Yeah,
if
and-
somebody's covered in scars, some people might find that, intimidating and drive them away, but others might be like, this guy knows what the fuck he's doing.
Dude, you gotta dodge.
Or does he? All you know is that he
Go
gets,
on!
You know-
Dodge!
Face tanking is just a term, right? Like,
all you really know at that point is he gets cut a lot.
turns out he just works in a scissor factory.
Hey, the guy knows his way around a pair of scissors.
I
They're
mean,
not good enough.
Edward Scissorhands was covered in scars and did know his way around a pair of scissors. That's my favorite way of thinking of this, is just think up interesting characters, like, could we create this character with this system?
Oh no. Oh, I have an idea for a madman that just keeps putting blades into into limbs. So when you go into this place, there's just that everywhere.
Have you ever heard of the game Blood Will Tell?
No.
That's an old PS2 game, very, very rare PS2 game, and that's what it's about. You start the game as a guy who's had his whole body torn apart, so you have swords for legs and swords for arms and no eyes at the beginning of the game, and like the first thing you do is you go and kill people and get your eyes back, so you put your eyes in, and then the game becomes color. And then as you go and fight, you're like getting limbs and stuff back, and you're like slowly putting your body back together, and you get all sorts of abilities as you do it.
That is a bizarre, bizarre concept.
It's very Japanese.
And I guess the mental side of appeal, I think, could be charisma. 'Cause it's-
Charisma implies the aspect of the physical with it, though. I think it's a bit of a loaded term.
Yeah. I agree it's loaded. I don't know that it necessarily implies that it has a physical connection, but I agree it's loaded.
Yeah, it's just like an overall ability to influence, and it could be looked at physically or mentally, and it's nice and simple for D&D, but I do think it's like an ability, the ability to influence.
I was trying to think of another term that means
Influence.
but influence might just be good enough.
Influence can also be like your station in society, though.
Yeah. Influence is still pretty. What's the word I'm looking for?
Thesaurus?
I have one up. I've always got one up.
Influence synonyms.
Yep.
It's basically like it's something like the word I'm looking for, it means manipulate, like the ability to verbally manipulate.
Leadership?
I guess it also depends what we want that stat to be able to do, because like communication is kind of broad, right? Through communication you can do a lot of conflict resolution, or if you know how to communicate with someone, you can intimidate them, I've just been reading Dune recently again, and there's a whole like
Oh, Frank Herbert's so good.
there's a whole collection of people who are just so good at communicating. They treat it like a weapon. It's like a battle when they communicate with each other and they, like, analyze everything that's going on. It's like
And
just
I do want that in this game. One of the things I hate in D&D is just like having a conversation with the GM, even though I've got all these talking skills and just relying on them to give me information. I want to be able to ask something and roll a die. Just be like, here's my result. Give me. That's really how it should be. That's how I do my campaigns. When you talk to somebody, I'm rolling dice to find out how much information you're getting.
We could use
Grease.
Persuasion.
Persuasion isn't a bad one. Guidance, no. Command. Juice. I need more juice. Gotta get this motherfucker to do what I want.
I think influence may be the best one, and we might just have to accept that it's a bit loaded.
I mean, influence does kind of capture it properly, since it's under mental. You can assume it's mental influence. Clout.
yeah, just add cloud.
Could do cloud.
Leadership kinda works.
Yeah, I don't think as well as influence though, because
Neither do I.
Not necessarily
Leverage.
a positive influence. Well, leverage, again, implications. English is a bad language.
Yep.
It implies that you've got something that you can use as leverage.
Yep.
The more I think about it, the more I like infinite influence.
I clicked grease, and then I'm way off track now. Lard, lubricant, oil, vegetable oil, drippings, tallow, animal oil.
Yeah, tallow, perfect.
I used tallow. Sorry, they already turned you into a candle. Fuck. I'm just gonna put influence for now with a question mark.
To motivate? Is there a word for that?
Inspire.
The closest one would probably be leadership to that one that I was saying.
Inspire is has a very positive connotation. Yeah, I think it's got to be influence, because that can be positive or negative. It could be, social standing, but hey, maybe that's what gives your character such a strong influence stat.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you to explain where your influence comes from if you're taking it as a stat. Is that really a mental... I mean, it is. What we're trying to capture is a mental stat, but influence really isn't a mental stat, and yet it's the best word for it, and that irks me.
Yeah. We're looking for something that gives you the ability to influence others.
Yeah, the problem is we're using the verb. We need we have the action. I'm trying to think of the thing that performs that action. They're not I guess persuasion's kind of that, but persuasion is a bit too.
Persuasion would be the skill that relies on this stat.
Because you persuade someone and influence. I guess persuading and influencing them. It's unless we want to go like.
I'm just done an interesting search here, and I've searched personal traits that increase persuasion. Nature of the source of a message. Oh, this guy. Yeah. Expertise, trustworthiness, attractiveness. In general, we are naturally more likely to accept the statements of an expert than a non-expert. Expertise is your skill. Trustworthiness is the third one with attractiveness.
Not necessarily.
It's not really what we're
going
looking
though.
for, but we want them to sound trustworthy when they talk, essentially. Confidence?
I think confidence is close, but
Almost.
I'm going to
that
add
kind of
it.
still has its like charisma annotations of you're going to be a kind of extroverted. If we could somehow communicate that it's going to be like you don't have to be.
You can
if
be.
you have confidence. Yeah, I
you
know.
can be introverted and confident.
Yeah, I'm just saying that like the word confidence typically as a stat going up will have those extroverted, pre-notions to it, but it can just be communicated that, I guess through how it's used, mental confidence is. But I think mental confidence might also overlap with resolve.
A little bit. I agree. I was thinking of that too. But there's, like, thinking about when I relay information to people, confidence really is one of the most important things. Even if you're not confident, if you just sound confident when you tell them the information, they'll believe it.
Ooh, authority.
Yeah, authority could work. Because if you have mental authority and your mental authority is higher than someone, you should be able to, influence them and intimidate them.
I'm not even going to put a question mark next to that one. I think I like that one. And it gives us 8 stats, 4 physical, 4 mental, which is a really nice spot to be in. And I think that encompasses everything we need. And I don't know if we're just broadcasting to ourselves, but nobody seems to be arguing with what we say.
I mean, I'm pretty sure it's just us, but...
Okay. It doesn't matter who else is here. I'm having fun. Fuck y'all.
Yeah, we're making a game system. This is sweet. Sway, perhaps? It's not a very good word.
I think
to use
authority
to
is a
describe
better
it,
word.
though. Yeah.
Authority makes me think of NWA song, which I kind of like.
This does not surprise me.
Because Ren said it with authority.
Yeah, I think authority might be the one.
At least for now.
It's enough to move forward with.
Yep. Next question.
So we've
Stat range. How is it decided?
we've determined using our role design that we're going to have skills that are ranked 0 to 5. Do we want to mirror that with our stats?
I think stats need more variation. There's less of them.
Do we want to do something more similar to D20 then, where it's up to 20?
D20 goes up to 24, 28, I believe. Something like that.
Only at max level, but
Well, those actually
The-
need magical items and stuff too.
the general character creation range is 1 to 18.
3 to 18.
Racials.
The tiers we have, they go to 5, right? Or do they go to 6?
They go 0 to 5 for skills.
Okay, so there's 6 total. So whatever we do, we'll probably want to keep it as a multiple of 6. So that scaling is nice.
Yeah. 18.
Yeah.
It's
I think
been done
18,
many times before.
24 or 30.
I don't
The
see
thing
any
I-
reason to... Do we want to keep the D20 out of this still, right? So we're going to be doing our stats with D6?
Yes. The way that I'm remembering now our previous discussions, the way that I had proposed before that it would also be 0 to 5, and that would be, a number of dice that you could use. For just like stat checks.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting question now. How do we want to do stat checks? And do we want stat checks? Do we need stat checks? We don't need stat checks. Everything can
We don't
fall under
need
a
stat
skill.
checks.
Everything can fall under a skill. Now, does that simplify it or complicate it?
It definitely means that there are more skills that we will need to create.
We could also look at broad group systems on the skills to solve that complexity level issue.
That introduces its own complexity, though. Like the first time I made a Shadowrun character, it was pretty hellish.
Yeah, but you just don't use the broad groups the way they did. That's the big
True.
thing.
So you're thinking then like you level the broad group, which would level all things underneath it equally, and then once you cap out the broad group, you could specialize?
Or you only level the very ends, and your broad group is the highest endpoint rating.
Like that better. That's much better. So I like the idea of not having stat checks. I think we can do that.
I'm sure we can do that.
Then do we need stats? Or do
Yes.
we want everything to just be skills?
No, you need stats. Your stats represent your character variation within the skills. It determines what skills you're good at, not good at, naturally better at than others. And your stats are a major part of your character progression. RP people will not be happy if you don't have stats.
It can be done.
It can
be done.
It can be. But that doesn't mean that the people that like RPing are going to like it at that point. Some people will.
But I think it is a good question to ask.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The answer is yes, that we need them.
So how do we represent these? Maybe these stats are a flat bonus to whatever you roll on the skill.
A value plus to the end value?
Yeah.
I don't mind that idea. It simplifies the math. And we could take WAD system then. They do 0 to 10 for stats.
Well, the thing with 10 is like I'm thinking about extremes. And if you're defending and you have 10 damage reduction stat, you are potentially able to completely nullify anything that comes at you. Because we're just not going to have numbers that are that big.
That's true. That's true. So you're thinking 0 to 5.
Yeah.
And then the most you add is 5 to your roll. And they're very
And that way-
expensive to level up because they're your base stats.
And well, I'm leaning towards a buy system for stats as well, just because buy systems are awesome.
I want a karma similar to karma buy system, where yes, you're going to need to look at a page when you level up until you memorize everything's value, but things need to be worth different. There's no way around that. If a stat is the same as a skill, then the only one's getting bought. I kind of like the 0 to 5 and just add it to your roll value for the skill associated with it.
So if I'm looking at our list of stats here,
Uh,
if
uh,
we move
Suda,
damage reduction,
Yeah.
before we
No,
move
okay.
on, I just wanted your input on that.
Sure. I'm thinking. I can't think of anything wrong with it. I think that's fine.
Okay.
I think if it's not set in stone, and we'll go
No,
through the
of course
test
not.
round of stuff. But I think it's good.
yeah, if we play test and it sucks, then we'll change it.
Yeah, never be married to any of your ideas. No matter how happy you are when it comes up, just be prepared for the fact that that awesome idea could play terribly.
Yeah, it could suck. There's potential for that.
Yeah, but you need a baseline game developed before you can play test to adjust. So you need to decide on something.
So if I'm looking at our physical and mental stat lists, if we take damage reduction and move it down one, we've got essentially the same thing. Like your combat, your power from a mental perspective is your intelligence. Your ability to use that intelligence is your wisdom, which is your dexterity. Your willpower and your resolve would be your mental fortitude, which is like your damage reduction or your health. And then we've got beauty and appeal and authority. I think that mirrors itself
Welcome.
quite well.
Welcome, Riff Kick. A stat or a check determines not only probability but also potency in the same roll.
Yeah, we've stepped away from the D20 system of having separated probability and potency into using a number of D6 and then the value that you roll being opposed against the other part of the roll.
Yeah. And then some quick math back and forth, and you're never using very big numbers, and you end up with a little value that is the potency change. So a raw
Also,
add of 1 to
the
5 is a nice...
I like the term potency for that. I've been using degree of success, which is a mouthful.
Yeah, probability and potency. It's almost like they were meant to be said together. Stat range, stat effect, +2, draw +2, roll.
So in a turn of combat, because that's still the easiest thing to do examples with, I'm trying to punch somebody. I've got 2 strength or whatever melee combat ends up being. I roll my 2 melee combat dice. I roll a 7. That would then get +2 from my melee combat stat, which would make it a 9. The defender rolls their 2 defending dice. They get a 7 as well, but because they're not a melee combatant, they take 2 damage through their block.
They don't have
Seem
any
reasonable?
damage reduction stat? They might take 1 damage. Maybe they have 1 stat.
Yeah, if they have 1 stat, then they'd take 1 damage.
Yeah.
Which then makes me think that we need to keep health pools small if we're going to have these be flat bonuses to rolls.
My idea, based on where we're going now, is to have flat health pools, like Shadowrun. And just, if you're hardy and beefy, then you're just harder to hurt. Things just do less damage to you, which is kind of what it is. That's really how things are. You know, like a big fucking monster bodybuilder getting smacked by a baseball bat, it just does less damage to him than it does to us because there's so much more to hit. It's the same hit. It's the same damage. He just reduces it a lot better.
So then if you use 0 to 5 stat value, each is worth a 20% increase. Yes, these stats are very hard to get.
Highly valuable, yes. It's something I've been thinking about as we're going. We've got to balance them as ultra value, but you're definitely going to want them. And it's it's gonna make you who you are for sure. I think it'll be interesting. It could be complete fucking jank, but it'll be interesting.
Oh yeah, it could be totally. But we're thinking of using something like Shadowrun's karma buy system for character creation, and you would have to spend your karma on both your stats and your skills. And skills are arguably more important than stats.
Would we want
go
to
ahead.
do something where you need a certain amount of points and certain skills to be able to get to the next tier of a stat, or vice versa? Or do we want to, like, I'm not too sure, because right now if we have 0 to 5, like, it's going to have to be either expensive or kind of delayed for a stat to go up, since there just isn't many of them. So I'm kind of wondering how we want to...
I do kind of like the idea of whatever stat applies to that skill, the skill can only be as high as the stat. That's not a bad system.
We did talk about that before when we were talking about how we were going to do the skill system.
Yeah, I've done stuff kind of similar before, and it usually works pretty well, right? Because then you're going to want to put like 2 or 3 points into at least one stat at the start, so that you can get those relative skills that you'll be using up there.
I feel like for a well-rounded character, though, you would want to have at least 1 in everything.
Yep.
If you were running 0 in any stat, you would have to, like, intentionally handicap yourself.
So,
Because, like, if you're running 0 melee combat, all you're ever going to be is a pleb flailing at people. If
Yeah.
you're running 0 agility, you're just a Butterfingers. If you're running 0 damage reduction, you're made of glass.
yep. And
If
it
you're
will
running 0
show.
intelligence, you're a dum-dum.
And that could be fun. You know, characters should have their weaknesses. My favorite addressing of that is through Shadowrun's newer system of creating character, where instead of just getting a bunch of points and having stuff you can buy, you have like a certain number of stats, a certain number of skill points and stuff like this that you can assign, and then you have a little value on the side that you can use to do your fine adjustments afterwards.
I don't know enough about it. You'll have to go further into that when we get into character building.
Well, think of it this way. When you go to do your stats, instead of just having this raw value, like how much do I really want to spend on my stats, it'll be like you have 5 points to assign to your stats.
Yeah.
Right? So they're going to have at least 5 stat points at the start. And it forces them into it. And then they've got that extra value, like, well, now that you're done, do you want to buy more? Or do you want to buy skills? Or do you want to buy this? And then you can do your minor adjustments.
Yeah, I like that. What is our base rule? What is the average probability of success? So the system that we're working on is actually opposed rolls with ND6, where N is your level of your rank of your skill.
There is the skill success. I can get you the link to this too. One sec. Done.
I also haven't seen spam of any of the links. I don't think your timers are running.
Should be. I think stuff is just broken on the Twitch times. There you go. There's one.
There it goes.
That's our current doc. I hit play on it. That's our current document, and that's the second one is the skills one.
Face. just says face.
All right.
Yeah, that happens. Just enough that we can start testing it and go, wait, what did we mean? And then we're already playing, so we can go, well, this feels the best, and then just write that down.
Yeah, this is still very much get our jank all into one place and then start removing the janky bits.
Yeah. I've built game with Riftkick before. It was a great experience, and I'm happy he's here for this, because he'll question us and
100%.
he'll question us and make us work for every single thing we put down, and it will be a better product at the end for it.
So I like
yeah.
the idea of gating skills on stats. Base roll is 1d6 at rank 0 of a skill. Yeah.
And then you're probably not going to have much of a plus either from your stat if your skill is so low. So you're not going to get very far doing it. Correct.
Plus ND6 where N is skill.
Oh yeah, N is skill, sorry. And then, so it's ND6 plus stat.
You mean plus skill?
So it'd be 1d6 plus ND6 where N is skill plus
N.
M
Yeah,
where M is stat.
That's pretty easy math. I can do that without having to really think or try. And if you
And
own a set of
having-
Yahtzee, you can play this.
And the interesting thing about this that I've just thought of is if you have high melee stat, but you just haven't had a chance to buy points for it, you can still overwhelm somebody who is at rank 2 just by having
0 to 5.
0 to 5 range, same as stats. Just by having your additional raw power behind it, your stat, not necessarily your skill. So you could get, 8 on your max roll rather than being basically like, well, I just can't get through this person's block.
Unless they roll horrifically low and crit fail.
Yeah.
Or something terrible. And that represents, like, somebody with no skill getting attacked by somebody trained. Nope. Well, no. It would be 66.
If you're
maxed out.
maxed, you roll 66 and you can have a flat bonus of 5. So it'd be 66 plus 5.
And then there will be other pluses and minuses from gear and stuff like that. You get a plus for having a lock pick kit when you're picking a lock. You get a better one for having an electric one. You get a really big one if it's like an auto picker.
You punch the door.
Or if you're Bort or your character's name that I'm just bad at words today, you just literally go through the door.
Zugzag.
Zigzag.
And part of the design goal of this Riftkick is that we're only allowed to use stuff the average gamer has around their house. So like D6 and pack of cards. We're not using fancy D8, D10, D12, D20.
I'm not sure if we found a use for the cards yet, but
We haven't found a use for the cards yet, but we are keeping in mind that most people have a pack of cards, and if we find some really cool use for, needing a divvy of 4 between 52 or 12 between 52, then we've got this option. It's there.
Yeah, and I mean the option of a literal pen and paper is always there as well. Like basic math can happen.
Yeah.
There's interesting stuff you can do with cards too if you want anything with luck, because you can. I had a whole section on this in a course I took before, but you can influence a lot of luck using a deck of cards since you have a controlled environment of 13. It's kind of like the same thing with rolling dice, but you can actually apply limits. So you can give someone like 8, 9, and 10, and they have those cards, and they can draw a card. And if it's lower, something happens. If it's higher, something happens. And then depending on what you want to resolve, that's how you can control odds. So it's basically a dice roll that you can put more control over, which is kind of neat.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd love for you to incorporate some of that if you can when
Sure,
we get there.
I'll think of something. It'll probably be something that happens. Maybe I'll keep it for no. I'll keep it in mind. I'll try to think of some sort of use for it. But RNG is not always great in a lot of scenarios. But I'll try to think of something where that would be kind of useful. Rare use, but interesting when it happens.
If we have something like Elven bullshit, like that would be perfect.
I would love to have a perk flaw system, and have one be like lucky, because I love lucky builds. They're hilarious.
As someone who's usually very lucky, yes. Fallout is a 10 luck run for me. Run to the blackjack tables and pay to win the rest of the game.
With a high luck in Fallout 2, you were more likely and actually unlocked certain rare events that you could encounter in the world map. Give you really good gear. And good laughs, because that team was hilarious.
So I'm pretty happy with that stat layout.
100 minus 11 divided by 30. Yeah. 81. 89. Yeah. Brain went the wrong way there.
A little bit. One half went this way and the other one went that way.
It just went one up instead of, or one down instead of one up. No, one up instead of one down is what it did. Yeah. I'm bad for going backwards instead of forwards. It does that. I always have to double check my numbers. Damn dyslexia.
I think that's, but for stats though, I think this is honestly good enough to playtest with. I think
Yeah.
that's solid.
Yeah. I'm fine with that. We kind of powered through it. We can do some more on skills with that figured out.
Have we talked about stat initiation? Like how everyone will start, how those things will go, how does progression work?
Character creation?
Stuff like that. Yeah, character creation, and I think progression is something we may want to touch in regards to stats. It might kind of help us kind of solidify things more, flush things out, or run into any walls that we need to.
Let's pull up the character. Let's pull up a page for character creation.
Yeah, and I guess after creation we can discuss a bit of progression too, because like the numbers we're using are very low, so that it's easy to do.
Yep.
But then we have to figure out kind of like, and I guess more on the design or the campaign side of things, how long do we want progression to be? Because in D&D, there is a lot of levels and a lot of skills, but the actual progression actually comes down to the DM and what they want. How much experience they're throwing at it. That curve is actually very flexible. And we can do the same thing, but I think we have to be a bit more careful because it's people like ranking up. But if it's only 5, then it can happen pretty quick. And then like how long do we want to hit max, or we want to be careful that there's not like a stagnant period like you get with MMOs when you hit rank 50 out of 60 and you're like, all right, I should be in a week I should be there, and then like 3 weeks go by and you're like, I'm only 55.
One skill point increases your awesomeness in that vector by about 3%.
I just love the description. Your awesomeness in that vector.
That's lovely. Yeah, skills are less expensive, certainly. And
So
we want a lot of them, probably. That's probably where the fun variation of the game is going to come. It's just you get enough stats. Oh, I can get this and 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 this because you saved up to put that stat up.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Pseudo. I've been talking over you.
No worries. Because we're not going to have like character level. We're not going to be like level 10 or anything. It's just going to be you get skills and you get stats, and these are the things that move up. Do we want the ability? Is it? Because the thing with character levels, I think, is that you can curve. I guess we curve the cost of everything.
Yeah.
But do we want to be able to curve the ability of an everyman? Because those initial costs are going to be pretty cheap. So what can kind of happen? I mean, I guess it's not really a bad thing, because if someone's just kind of okay at everything, it means they're not good at anything, which isn't really ideal builds.
Yep.
So it's probably fine that's possible. I guess, yeah. I think we'll talk about that more with progression and how we'll kind of limit the ability to have that, or if we want it to be possible for someone to have 5 in every skill if they've kept a character around long enough that they're just...
Yeah, I mean, the same thing
a god.
happens in every other game I've ever played. If your character's been around long enough, you just eventually become an unkillable god, and the player has to retire. So it's just not interesting anymore. Like, I'm sorry, man. What I always did when my characters, or whenever one of my players' characters got to the point where, like, it's over. You know, it's time to settle down and get a little cottage somewhere, roll a new character. Then that character just went into memoriam and got used in all my campaigns moving forward as a tribute to them, because there's so much story built up with them already. Why not use them in all of your stories?
You could do the Rogue Legacy bit and just have it be their offspring.
Yep.
Reroll as their offspring.
Yep.
My favorite thing I've seen with people when characters get too strong and they want to still do a campaign is that they'll do something creative to either like reduce their power or something that just, you know, provides some inhibitions. And like one of them was like they become kids again, so like their stats get reduced slightly, and it's a little annoying but also just kind of silly because now you're just like a bunch of teens trying to like go through a dungeon, and this witch that, you know, got you that you ran into caused this, and now, you know, things are still scary. You're still the same character, you still have gear and all that stuff, but it was interesting take. And another one was they added phobias. They ran into someone who provided all the players with a phobia, and if they encountered their phobia, their stats would basically drop by a lot. So it added like an extra thing. If you're not completely invincible, you have a flaw. It's a bit of a forced flaw, and it's a temporary flaw, but at least, you know, flaws make it interesting, and you got to have some threat.
I'm a big fan of perk flaw systems, so that's something we can talk about in character creation. Do you want to do character creation right now, you were saying?
Yeah, I think we
Right?
should sort out how characters will start. If everyone just like gets with one skill and something, or if they just start with all zeros and start working their way up, or how that kind of goes.
Something to think about with these numbers is it's totally linear. Yes, that is something we definitely need to be aware of. And the cost associated with them, I don't think we can afford to have be linear as well.
No, the cost has to be exponential if the value increases linear.
Because like I'm thinking like 1, 2, 4, 8, 16 for stats, and then maybe linear for skills, because there's just going to be so many of them.
Obviously not the actual values 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, but that kind of an increase.
I mean, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16 honestly seems like a pretty reasonable starting point to me. What other ramps are you thinking? Because like stats are going to be your gateway to a whole new level of skills, like a whole new gamut of things that you can do. So they need to be difficult to acquire. And if you want to master something, like it makes sense that you would have to spend a long time training to get there.
There's a part that's being missed though in this linear scale, is that you get a dice roll. An extra dice roll, which is a lot more powerful than just 1 point.
Yeah.
That adds a lot more to what you're going to be able to do and how well you're going to be able to do it. So it's not really linear. The progression is, so we just have to curve experience, but when you get more skill, when you get an additional dice roll to something, especially with something like advantage, it's not just you're a percentage better. It's a bit more of a spread. Percentages are better, but that's kind of how that's going to curve up right there.
Yeah, stats are actually more powerful because a die roll is always going to be at least a +1.
Yeah, and having more dice roll isn't always just a linear spread, just because, you know, probability. If you get 2 more dice roll, you're going to be rolling an average of 7 between them more often. Where if you just have 1 dice roll, you can't even roll a 7.
Rift kicks. Something that to keep in mind here for your calculations, you don't actually end up rolling 11 dice or 10 dice. You roll the amount of dice I guess you do roll them all, but you only
roll them
keep-
all, but you keep the number that your
Yep.
opposing roll has.
Yeah. So if the other person only has 3 dice and you have like 6, then you're going to roll 6, but you're only going to keep your 3 highest to match their 3. So the scales won't get all crazy out of whack in number values, but you'll still have a distinct advantage due to having more dice to put into that 3 pool to combat with.
And then advantage gives you an extra die to work with.
Yeah.
Which I'm not sure that we actually wrote any of that down in the skill doc.
I'm pretty sure we did. I don't know if it was saved.
That's what face stands for, right? That's what we meant by that.
Attack and defender, roll dice, attacker adds success. I'm sure we wrote down more than that, but yeah, we didn't get much of it. We got the crit fail, crit success, target opposed roll, target success, advantage, add a die. Yeah. Each number of dice equal to skill pool. Yeah. So the most dice you can have is your skill pool. Your total minus total opposed. We
We got rid
not-
of crit fail and crit success.
Yeah, we did. This doc did not get updated.
Yeah, get rid of crit fail, crit success. We dropped that for now.
Is this even the right doc then? Is there a different one?
Yeah, we got rid of that. Or maybe just saved an old version. Maybe there's another tab open, and one of us closed later, and it just purged.
It could be.
Collaboration.
Okay,
Get
we
pushed
remember
forward.
most of it.
Yeah, I guess we got rid of crit fail, crit success. It's just a person rolls dice, and then you just roll more dice to have a better chance if you are much better than them.
You're not taking away dice, you're rolling them and choosing which ones you keep. That's all.
Our definition of advantage there isn't too... Oh, never mind, you're explaining it right now. It's just my stream's delayed. Refresh.
Yeah, but you want the person with more dice to win.
Yeah, that's...
More often.
They're more
yeah.
skilled. That's...
Yeah, yeah.
that's-
If you're at 5 and we're at 1, you should probably win most of the time.
Like 9 out of 10 times.
Way more than that.
It's like Arnold
That-
Schwarzenegger versus a kitten.
Yeah, you're at the top versus the bottom of the spectrum. That's like some guy off the street that's maybe been in a couple street fights in his life walking into the dojo and trying to take on the grandmaster who trains the class. He's gonna be made to look like an absolute fucking fool. Not really. It's pretty simple to play, but we'll have to get to the playtest and see how it goes.
I mean, if you want to drop in some notes on what you think could be an alternative system, we'll definitely take a look at it.
Absolutely. We just needed to put something in place. Well, we'll see how much it is when we get there.
It's basically just playing Yahtzee.
Yeah. It's not much more complicated than Yahtzee.
Yeah.
Your value on that won't change, but again, we'll get to the playtest on that. For now, let's talk about character creation.
Yeah, that
just-
was sort of our target, was make it as easy to play as Yahtzee.
if you have a Yahtzee set, then you can play.
Yeah, limiting on what pieces we can use. So styles. We have point buy system, full dice systems. Many different ways to roll dice for it. I don't think many of us are a fan of it, but that is a way it's done.
Base
Assigned
and
points
modify.
system. Assigned plus by hybrid. Also consider software. For our playtesting, you mean? An interesting idea.
Yeah, I figured we'd throw this into
Oh, you haven't seen one that supports dice pool comparisons? Weird.
I mean, you don't really need a super complicated VTT. I mean, you could just do it in, you know, desktop simulator or tabletop simulator. It's not really. It's really a higher number when you just take your two. Okay, one person rolls 2 dice, one person rolls 3 dice. It's a 5 and a 6, and the other person rolled two 4s and a 5. The person with a 5 and a 6 wins that one. It's, I don't know, man. We'll get to playtesting. I wouldn't get too concerned about it right now.
Yeah.
Just kind of don't worry about it. If you want to suggest something else, that's fine. But it's, you know, something that'll come up in playtesting.
I'm all for the assigned plus by hybrid. We lost Rage.
Oh no. I'm not too sure what the assigned by hybrid actually represents. I'm
Okay,
not too familiar with that system.
Assign. You know what assigned points are?
Assigned point system. Can you give me? No, I don't. I don't know the examples.
So
of that.
you get 5 skill points or 5 stat points and 10 skill points and 3 resist points, and you put them in, and that's what you start with.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
And then the point buy is just you've got a value of experience. Yeah, absolutely. And we are well aware, and my major thing is trying to keep it as simple as possible. So when we get to the play testing, I'll be scrutinizing heavily. You know me. We're not married to the ideas. We just got to test them, play with them. Roll dice is obviously the D20 way. Primarily, they use kind of roll dice and some assigned points later on for skills and whatnot. Assigned plus buy is where you get a few points, like I was talking about earlier, and then you've got a value of experience on the side. So before you ever start, you got the level up system, and it kind of lets the player play with the level up system at the beginning. A little bit of conditioning. You're going to be doing this a lot in the game. Get used to this.
Yeah. Well, we have a very limited amount of stats and skills. So I'm just right out of the gate, just how many points are even going to be there? Because I'm thinking there's only going to be like 1 or 2 you can put into stats, and 1 or 2 or 3 you can put into skills, and that's kind of just.
Well, there's going to be a lot of skills. That's kind of our goal.
Will they be able to put multiple in one, or they just get to pick the first tier of each?
Well, that's why we're saying like maybe I think 3 skills or 3 stats would be a good place to start.
It's just kind of like how strong do we want them to start off as? And I'm more on the side of like most of these games should be fun, so I'm fine with them just having that power fantasy at the start. Like they should just be.
Well, there's also
good.
eight to go across, right? And you can't put a single point of a skill in until you've put 1 into a stat. So you're going to probably want to have 1 in like 2 or 3 stats at the start, and maybe have 2 in one of them. So maybe like 4 points.
Sorry, my network driver crapped out there for a second. Did we do a demo of what the assigned plus point buy would look like?
We haven't gotten that far yet. We were just kind of talking about what all the systems mean that I've written down.
Yeah.
Ah,
Trying
okay,
to
gotcha.
find a starting point right now. Like how many stats will they? How strong will they be? And how many? Because like we have a very limited range in skill stat, and as well as their actual stats. Words are getting
Yeah.
hard here,
Let's
but like
let's
0
do
to
an
5. So
assigned.
like a one is like our curve is pretty strong. So like, do we want to limit, if they have 3 to start with and they choose, do we want to limit them to not be able just to dump it all into one kind of an idea? Like, what are our requirements going to be ongoing that we can curb and limit it or keep it,
I
start the curve off properly?
I think if you put 3 into one and have 0 in the other 7, you're gonna be good at that one thing, sure, but you're gonna be so useless at everything else that I think it's gonna be more of a hindrance. Another problem with the Yahtzee dice matching, what about just raw checks against the environment? It's all a matched roll, and the opposed roll in a PvE situation, they use a dice pool equal to the difficulty of the skill check.
Yeah, so it's just tiered 0 to 5 as well.
Yeah.
And
So-
if you beat their roll, then you did it. Yay.
Or you progress X amount of work based on the values of the roll. So it could take you a few turns to complete it. Yeah. Yeah, we are very aware of that problem. We have to keep
That
the
was something
values
that
small.
That was something that we argued about for like 2 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, restraints makes things difficult, but it's also what allows for a little bit of creativity to get in there and try to make something different. We're not trying to make something better. We're just trying to make something different.
Yeah. Necessity
it's-
is the grandfather of creation, right?
Yeah, like we're not trying to outdo the D20. Like that is just a fantastic system. Um, so we're just trying to do something limited with D6s, and that limits us quite a bit to what we can do, especially when it comes to complexity, because then most of the problems we have are just solved by a D20.
Nice thing is max players can still be beat. Yeah, that's the idea. It won't be very common, but it's still possible.
And I mean, you've been trying to kill my Kratos ripoff, and everybody else in the game has died. So you know how abusable the D20 system is.
Yeah, we talked
I-
about this before too, and there's ways we can mitigate that. I mean, if the opposing roll is only 1 dice and you're rolling, so many other ones, like the chances of it happening are very rare. And we talked about that too. If like you're this super strong guy and you have this like 1 in 30,000 chance of failing, and then it happens, and it's so rare that maybe one player in years will ever experience it, and it's going to be a weird mechanic to have. But there's ways that we can just get around that. And we talked about that in that sheet I thought before, where there was degrees of failure that we have.
Yeah,
that's what
we
talking
were
about
writing
that.
down that somebody must have had it open and overwritten all that. Yeah.
But I mean, like, it's not really too much. Like, it's something that we'll need to be aware of. But it's something like that we're trying to just get to a playtesting point, because this system is going to be wildly different when we're playtesting it than it is on paper, and a lot of this stuff will kind of come up then. And like one thing I'm mostly worried about is like, it's probably going to get a bit dry, or it might get a bit dry, kind of when we're rolling a dice and just comparing. Is it really going to be that much dynamic? Is there going to be enough, variable of difference to really have it be engaging? Or is the player going to win too often? If they're too strong, there's no chance of ever losing at all, so that, why bother even rolling the dice, because I know I'm just going to win. There's a lot of stuff in between that we need to identify through play testing, and then we'll go back on a mechanic level and try and sort that stuff out.
That's what we do.
Yeah, that's
That's what we came up with.
Yeah, so to clarify it, you so like the roll check is 3, so you're both rolling 3 dice, and we don't remove anything. It just works kind of like advantage. So you're both rolling 3 or the one person's rolling 3 dice. The person that had a lot more skill, we say it's the player has a lot more skill, is going to be rolling, let's say, 5 dice. They roll 5 dice and they keep their highest 3. So that there is a cap The problem with that is that if you have 2 dice, or if you have 1 dice, you like the average roll is going to be 7, and you'll never be able to beat that. There is a minimum number that you can't do, and it also gets to be quite a bit of math, which we were kind of reducing. We don't want to have to add, a whole lot of numbers, at least at the start when people are getting into the game. If it's later on and these pools start getting bigger, then it gets comparison. But
It's not the same as removing 2, though.
It's not.
It's very meaningfully different for probability.
Yeah, you're also not adding the whole sum and subtracting other dice. You're just grabbing the biggest dice and adding those up. It simplifies the math.
The initial system we were going with was a success-fail system, and it was just way too complicated, so we simplified down to this.
And we'll get to it when we play test, but let's just figure out character creation for now.
Yeah. So assigned would be... So with 8 stats, right, how many stat points would you expect a person to get at the start?
So with 8, I would... My brain is stuck on the number 5 for some reason, and I can't clarify at all why.
Well, how strong is like rank 1? Is rank 1 just like, it's still 1 dice, right? So you can still kind of do some things, just not very well at all. So you kind of need 2 dice to be able to have a chance at most difficulty 1 things. Since that was kind of our idea of, they're going to be rolling that 1 dice. And you kind of like need a bit more for the probability to succeed more. So do we want them starting off a lot weaker, or do we want them to kind of have a bit more, or at least 1 or having like 2 dice on almost,
You don't want to be a
abilities they want.
completely useless klutz in most things at the start of the game.
I think it's probably safe to say
fun.
that the character should probably just be generally better at everything at the start, at least for most things, and then they kind of specialize in what's there. But in a general sense, I think it's fine to play that power fantasy.
And I think, like, I'm sort of waffling on values with karma that you can spend on either skills or stats. And between having a system where you can have, like, you have skill points and you have stat points. Because the value of a skill is arguably not as high as a stat, because the stat unlocks access to skills.
But if you give them like 5 to assign right away, then are you okay with a lot of people just having 5 in 1 stat right from the get-go?
They couldn't.
Why?
Because the point buy is 1, 2, 4.
No. This is the assigned part, not the buy part. So, like, how many you want them to end up with? A total of a bunch, because we want them to make sure they have at least a few, right? So we want to give them some points and say, here, you must spend these ones on it. And the sane person and most people will put them all in the same one and then use the buy part to try to buy a couple more at the cheaper value.
Then do we want to say that you have these 5 points to spend and you can only level things up to rank 2? Because, like, you can't get over 18 without modifiers at the start of D20 either.
We could do, and I've never actually seen it done, but it's sort of a play on the assigned plus hybrid system where it's all point buy, but you've got experience pools for different areas.
What if we do pick 1 primary and 2 secondaries? And the primary is rank 2 and your secondaries are rank 1.
I don't think that gives enough flexibility for a well-rounded character.
That's just the start. If we're doing We could have the buy afterwards.
If we're doing assigned plus buy, then yes.
I like that idea as well. With the buy at the end.
If we're just doing assigned, I don't think that's enough for a well-rounded character.
No, yeah, I was thinking of that would just get you kicked off, and then you would be able to buy it from there.
Yeah. If you want to put it all into skills and just be not a very well-rounded character, that's up to you. But the first few points are going to be cheap, so you're probably good to buy a couple. And then if you wanted to get 3, it would be 4 buy.
Yeah, we actually had this exact discussion, and I was on your side. I was like, no, just use the whole totals.
Yeah.
So if we're gonna do raw assignment, I don't think it's enough. If it is assign plus buy, I think pick a primary and 2 secondaries is totally fine. We then just need to think about what buying is going to look like. Because I feel like buying should be maybe a linear scaling on skills, because they're not going to be as impactful as stats. And then 1, 2, 4, 8, 16 on stats.
The
And like each
experience
stat,
will be very small, like 1 a session kind of thing.
you'll get assigned points, be it end of session or like you do something super cool, rule of cool, DM decides to give you a karma point. You can then use that on the first level of a skill or taking a stat from 0 to 1.
Let's steal from Shadowruns on this one for the rule of cool and actually make... So they have a laugh rule. And it's not even like written as GM discretionary. It's just like if a player does something in character, or in that version. I don't think I saw it in the newer versions, but in the 2nd edition that I was playing, I think it was. It was if you make everybody at the table laugh, you get a point of karma. In character. To encourage fun at the table. So we could do the same thing, include the laugh rule, and with the cool rule, make everybody exclaim. Like you do something and the whole table goes, oh, you get a point.
At DM discretion, of course, like that's all down to campaign tuning.
Encourage the
like
fun. No, yeah.
No,
they're
that's
always
down to the DM though.
They're always
That's down
welcome
the
to
DM.
they're always welcome to ignore rules written in the book. That's up to them. I always use them. They're great. So how many skill points would you assign to the start? And you don't need to limit a primary, secondary. Because...
Yeah, nice to see you, Rifkick.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you very much for questioning us, making us reevaluate.
The way that we're doing it if we're doing an assign plus buy, I think we should probably go with the same as stats, honestly. You get 1 rank 2 and 2 rank 1s.
But I don't think there's any need to limit it so much. Like 5 or 6 skill points is fine.
I think it depends on how, like I said, we kind of might want to figure out a bit of a progression. Like,
yeah,
it's not really a bad thing if they start off without much, if they get them quick, because then it gives the player a lot to kind of do at the start. Because that curve, like you said, we only have a range of 5, so that's going to slow down pretty quick. And if we give them too much at the start, then they're never really going to be able to upgrade those. So we might just want to kind of have the game start off
Well,
you
this
know,
this is also then a question of how many skills we have, right? Because the more
Well, I
skills
mean,
we
our
have, the more
goal,
points they should have, and we wanted a lot of skills.
our goal is a lot.
so I'm still thinking like I said, it also depends if we limit, how many they can put into one skill.
But yeah, they are limited by how high the stat is that the skill applies to. That's why I was thinking that just having a bunch of skill points isn't a big deal. They're only limited to putting 1 at max in a couple and 2 at max in another, unless they use a lot
Yeah.
of their buy to get that up to 3. Then they can get 1
Yeah,
or
it's
2 up to 3.
once we have the number of skills, it's just pretty simple math.
Yeah.
You just figure out, how much it costs for a 2 and how much, it costs for 1. And then we figure out how many we want, and there we go.
And then buy, they could have like 15 to 20 XP. Sign. 10 to 15.
I'm leaning more towards the 20 side on that one, because shit's gonna get expensive real fast. Because we have a lot of stats, and their price needs to jump exponentially.
Mm-hmm.
And for the skills, they'll be linear, but
There's just so many of them.
There's just gonna be a lot of them. Like my goal is 40, 5 per point or 5 per stat.
Yeah, I think that's totally doable. Do you want to work on skills for a bit then?
If we want to keep everything on 6s, we could do 36. Or no, 48. Not 36. 48 or 32.
That's a lot.
It's
like a lot.
It is a lot of skills. I personally would like to see 40 though. I think that's a good spot, and then give 20 points to play with, because if you really wanted to be a generalist, you could give yourself 1 in every stat, because that's not going to be expensive, but you're not going to be good at anything. And then
let's
give yourself 1 rank of 15 skills.
Let's do this. Let's go to the skill structure. Copy the stats. And let's just start adding. Typing like a madman. Torturing that keyboard.
So for melee combat, I think that one's pretty straightforward. Unarmed melee, or unarmed sword club, 2-hand sword, 2-hand club.
And we just want to do loose groups all the way? Or do we want to
Well,
do tight group?
rather than sword, we could do 1-hand finesse weapon, 2-hand finesse weapon, 1-hand strength weapon, 2-hand strength weapon.
Well, we have agility, speed to do finesse type weapons and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, if we're going to do strength dex split between the two, because I was going to approach agility, speed, and initiative more as a defensive thing rather than an offensive thing. Or, ranged combat, because we haven't tackled that at all.
Ranged is definitely a thing. This is kind of why we need to look at this now before we go much farther in character creation. Because I really like the idea of a specific group and broad group. And you're kind of naming the broad groups right now.
Yeah.
And then maybe we have 6 broads and then just as many as we can name within each one.
Or at least 5 broads per stat.
5 broads per. So let's just try to focus on the broads of 5, and then we can fill in the details after.
I don't know about drilling too much deeper. I think that's something that we'll need to play with a bit to decide on.
Yep. This is how I was talking about, you put the points into the specific, and your broad is the value of your highest specific. And then if you have to use the
Yeah,
broad value, it just applies half basically to any of them.
I'm just concerned about overwhelming a new player, because that was one
Yeah.
of the problems that I had getting into Shadowrun as well, because they had a similar system. And it was very much just like a holy fuck, this is so much to deal with. I don't even know where to start wrapping my head around this.
That's fair. We'll look at it as we go.
Yeah, it's something we'll definitely have to take a look at. So rather than it being like strength dex, if we're using the definitions that we have on the page here, it's like
We don't have any
melee
real
combat.
names, though. This is just a general description of what we would want it to impact.
Sure. And we're describing something that impacts melee combat, so that could be
Strength.
strength weapons, that
The
could
most
be
common.
finesse weapons.
Yeah.
So I think we need to kind of nail down what these are going to be, because if
Yeah.
it's going to be melee combat, then I think the way that I suggested those groupings is fine. If we're going to go strength dex, then we need to
Well, melee
think
combat is
about-
more of a skill, so we should try to make it more of a physical attribute.
yeah.
So do we want it to be more of the strength side of things? Because I think that's more what we need here. More of a
Yeah.
strength type ability, a raw brute force ability. You
I mean,
could
we
call
could
it
even
brute force.
Could even call it force just to be a little different. But I feel like it would be essentially strength.
I'm not one to give something a fancy name just to make it sound different. Just let people understand what it is. Everyone understands
Yeah.
what strength is. Just use it. Do we want agility
So-
or dexterity? Agility is
say
my
just-
preferred.
I would honestly say just call it dex.
But
Because
agility and dexterity are not the same thing, and I want this.
I know. But we could have an agility rating that is calculated from dex to determine like initiative bonus and movement speed. But at the same time, we need something for ranged weapons. Strength doesn't matter. You need to be able to hit things.
I think it's at the precision.
We could bump
kinda-
beauty off and do strength, agility, dexterity.
I think. Well, I don't know if I think agility can probably get just wrapped up into in between strength and dexterity, just for simplicity's sake. Because you can move faster if your legs are stronger, and you know how to, step where you need to step if you're dexterous.
So we can just use strength and dexterity as a calculation for it, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
So then in order to like tumble and stuff like that, you have to be dexterous.
Yeah, you would have to be dexterous in order to survive a long fall in a way that doesn't involve just flat out reducing the damage. You would have to be able to, land and roll gracefully so that you don't break any limbs.
I just pictured this dude with like giant calves jumping off a building and just landing on them, and just being like, "I'm okay."
I guess it
Just
isn't.
just superhero landing.
Never skip leg day.
I guess it isn't explicitly, but it does say especially. Skill in performing tasks, especially with the hands. It's not explicitly with the hands.
Yeah,
But dexterity does tend to
it's,
focus on hand.
it's precision. It's
Yeah.
how precise you are in your movements, is what dexterity is.
I mean, we could call it precision. That would work for ranged movement.
I'm much
as well
happier
as-
to call it precision than dexterity. I
Yeah,
really
I like
am.
precision because I think because they can go with like a sword stab. If you can be super strong and when you hit them it hurts, but if you have precision, you hit where the damage is going to be. But if you're swinging with a giant club or something, doesn't
You
really
don't have
matter
to
too
be
much.
very
where
precise.
you don't really matter where you're hitting them.
As long
You
as
hit
you
them
have the strength to pick it up and swing it, you're good.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
it's
Yes, I like this. Constitution Fortitude, endurance.
If we're going... Go ahead, Suda.
As I said, I've always liked the word fortitude, but I'm fine. It kind of means the same. Constitution and fortitude don't really mean too much different for me.
But this is more damage reduction than just adding health. Fortitude's a cool term for it.
Fortitude, I like. It's synonymous with like toughness.
But also has a meaning towards endurance as well as toughness.
I like
Yeah.
fortitude. I like it.
Strength, precision, fortitude, and beauty.
Maybe call it appeal rather than beauty. Because like we said, you can be ugly but appealing. You can't be beautiful but ugly.
Intelligence or knowledge? Which do you think is more clear? I think intelligence is very clear by this point.
I think intelligence is clear because it's learned.
Yeah.
Like rather the players have learned it. I think knowledge and experience are a little bit more explicit
Okay.
for what we're going for.
If we did kind of say the people who haven't played other games like this before because they don't have the dice and stuff, so they probably wouldn't have played others.
My only issue with experience is that it gets really weird when you have to use... I mean, it makes sense. You use experience to level experience, but it's kind of a keyword.
We can just not call it experience.
Yeah, like I'm fine with experience. I don't know if we're using the keyword, it's going to be...
I mean,
okay.
it's such a loaded term just because of every other game that they're ever going to play again after this, if it gets them into these types of games or video games or anything like that.
Maybe knowledge and wisdom.
I'm fine with that. Resolve or willpower?
I really like resolve.
And influence? Confidence? Authority?
I think either influence or authority.
Yeah.
I know when we were discussing that, you were leaning towards authority.
I like authority more. My only concern with it is that it does require to communicate what we mean by it, and influence does come with a bit of precognition we can play with. Most people know the term influence, but mental authority is probably not a term many people have heard of. But it allows us to get a fresh slate, and not have to worry about that same problem too of people come in with precognition of what an influence is going to be, and then it may not line up to how we're actually using it. So it might be best.
The major skill categories underneath it might help define it as well.
Yeah. Maybe we should just jot up an example under it of what a mental authority skill would be, and that might make it a bit clearer.
So mental authority skills, let's do those first then. That's like intimidate.
The first thing that pops to mind for me is intimidate.
Persuade.
I'd see like resistance to bluff and stuff like that. I can't remember what that terminology is.
Wouldn't that be resolve though?
I think resolve was more of a... I guess it depends which is like... Because one seems more offensive, one seems a bit more defensive, which is fine. Because, I mean, strength and fortitude. If we want authority to be the kind of offensive mental stats, and then resolve to be the defensive mental stats.
Well,
I was thinking of resolve like the mental version of fortitude, and authority or influence to be the mental version of appeal.
you could also look at bluff as being wisdom to see if it's a bluff or not.
Yeah.
Whereas resolve would be more like if they're magically trying to force you to do something, your ability to resist being forced to do it.
Whereas influence and authority would be manipulating your ability to influence others.
Yeah. So you bluffing or persuading. Is bluff its own, or is persuade? I guess bluff is its own skill.
Yeah, probably their own.
Persuading is just getting your point across and getting them to see your point of view. Bluffing is using a lie to do that. What else you think? You were the one who wanted 5. I got 3. I've done more than half your job for you.
So do we want to allow for magic?
Yes.
Okay. So how do you think that magic would be able to interact with these? Because obviously knowledge would be good for stuff that is arcane. Wisdom would be good for stuff that is natural. But influence and authority may be good for conjuration.
I could see if we want to do a bit more magical or a bit more like enhanced stuff, we can get into things where authority it is kind of on the offensive. So maybe that allows you to words are hard right now, but like a bit more like we could do something more like on the scuff of like mind reading, where you can like get a full read of something or get something out of them from just kind of like you basically just poke their mind from your mind.
Okay.
Kind of just.
We're getting close to the end of this stream, so maybe we can just take a few minutes to quickly talk about the magic system, because I told you I wanted to introduce you to the World of Darkness magic system at some point, because I'm highly influenced by it in everything I do pen and paper now. So they have, and I have the book, I can send it to you guys, Mage of the Ascension, and you can read it yourself, but in a nutshell, there's 8 spheres of influence of magic, and they have varying levels of control over those spheres depending on how many points they put into it. So basically like 8 different skills within magic for them to control. And one will be, say, life. And at rank 1 life, they may be able to use the magical essence of the world to detect if something is alive or not. Maybe on the other side of the wall, maybe in front of them, and they can't tell if it's living or not. Maybe they can just sense life around them. They can do it at will. They can choose to do it, but that's only about the level of control, a sense. Level 2, maybe they can get a minor control over it, and if it's alive, make that plant, change shape or move in some way. Level 3, they start getting a minor level ability to change it to their will and change life forms and, change and make a plant bigger or change it into another kind of plant or turn it into a snake or something similar like that. And then it's get the idea, it's a growing level. Entropy was one of my favorite mages. As an example of one of my favorite tricks that I pulled, I walked into a room and a guy pulled a gun on me, so I changed his perception so that it looked like I was 100 feet or like 100 meters away from him. And the whole room just went, whoa! And he was holding this pistol like, whoa! And there was no way
the
he could hit
LSD
me.
LSD just hit all at once.
Yeah, like at normal range, it was an easy shot, but all of a sudden now you're shooting me 2 blocks away. Oh no! I'd roll up a newspaper and just go like this, and then use my magic to let me see really far, turn it into a telescope. Because the major balancing force of the magic, because it sounds like just, oh wow, that's overpowered. And it is overpowered. And very, very fun because of it. But the balancing factor is that the magic is like warping the natural world, essentially. You're breaking the laws of nature, and nature has its own sort of immune system to prevent these sorts of things from happening. So you actually build paradox if you allow people to witness things that shouldn't be, basically. The stronger the spell, the more paradox you generate, and then the GM can just, like, use that paradox later. It's just it's like his own spell points in your magic pool, and he can just, like, oh, this happens now.
Nope.
or even like the paradox, it can rebound. So like if I did that to somebody that doesn't know magic and got a bunch of paradox for it, I didn't get shot, but then like, I might be driving a car and then similar thing happened to me. It's just like reality's just like, don't do that.
So then do we want to have our own set of magic schools?
Yes.
Cool. So do you have any objections to the ones that I suggested? Like knowledge being of the arcane, wisdom being of like nature and drawing on the power of the planet sort of thing. Resolve being essentially buffs, debuffs.
Do we want the magic tied into the skills necessarily, or do we want the magic to just be a magic system on its own?
I think it would be tied into the skills.
I gotta head out right now. I gotta
Okay.
go do a thing, so I'm gonna be peace right now. But I'm very excited in regards to how we'll do magic and stuff like that. But this was great. I will talk to everybody later, and hopefully some games later as well.
Yep. We'll be around for some Fields of the Battle or some Insurgents of the Seas.
Surgeons of the Robertos.
Hey,
Man,
you can.
I want that mode back. I want that mode back.
I was going to say,
bad.
Sudo can fire up a private server and we can do
Yeah.
private server frenzy mode and get
Yeah,
everybody in.
One quick tidbit, remind me later, but I've been meaning to set up an exposed game panel for those Docker images for you guys, so you can just launch them when you want, and they should be all pre-configured. You can just choose which one you want. If you want regular mode or whatever map or whatever, and they're all just images, so you don't have to change any config. They're all just pre-done. You just start it up and stop and start the other one up if you want it to bind to the same port.
Sudo, I love you.
Anyways, I'll talk to you guys later. We'll get that set up. It'll be good.
Cheers.
See you later, buddy.
Have a good night.
Yeah, and you could combine different spheres of magic together in World of Darkness.
Yeah, and that's not something that you would be stopped from doing here either.
No, I'm
You would
absolutely. I'm
need
just
to have-
just letting you know. Just letting you know.
Yeah.
So how many different spheres do we want to have then?
Honestly, I would say 4.
4 or 8?
4 or 8, yeah, one of the two.
I'd like to
If
be able to
you-
fit 1 or 2 into knowledge, 1 or 2 into wisdom, 1 or 2 into resolve, and 1 or 2 into influence then.
If you can come up with categories that make sense, then absolutely, let's do 8.
Okay. I can do it. I can absolutely do it.
So just to finish off influence and authority then, let's talk about what magical spheres could be influenced by that stat.
I need to come up with them first, but
like the thing that I'm leaning towards is conjuration, because you're forcing your will into existence in the world.
Well,
That
we
is
don't-
very much influence.
that's using the D&D sphere names. We really
Sure,
need to come up with
whatever
our own
the
sorting.
call it summoning. It doesn't fucking matter.
Okay,
But
so you're talking about
like
actual,
the idea
like-
is
well,
you're
that's just
making-
part of conjuration, right? There's a lot to conjuration.
Sure, whatever. You're making something that would never happen in the actual world happen. You are forcing your will to happen.
That
in
is
the world.
all of the magic, though. You're causing the natural world to work differently in some way.
Sure, if you want to go that general, but I'm talking about like making a thing. Like you create a hunk of wood that wasn't there before.
Mm-hmm.
Like you are influencing the world and making something happen and changing the way that the state of the world is, rather than changing how things work within it. You're
But-
changing the state.
Remember, there are no spells in this system. It's just something you can influence. So when you go into summoning, then all of a sudden, like, you need other things to work with it in order to make anything. Because for the wood, you need, like, matter. So as an
Not
example,
necessarily.
here-
It's magic. You can do bullshit.
I understand, but here's my point. Let me just pull up the World of Darkness magic spheres and give you there's Prime, Life, Mind, Correspondence for messaging, communication, Forces, which would be your, magic missile and stuff like that would be Force. A fun thing to do with Force is to reverse the kinetic force of a bullet. Things like that. Where you have a specific sphere of influence. Matter was one to, change the shape of matter, control matter, create matter at higher levels, destroy matter at highest levels, things like that. But matter wouldn't give you power over life. Life was if it was alive. You could actually turn matter into something living if you had matter and life. Things like that. You understand what I mean by their sphere, their influences?
Yeah. I'm confused as to what prime is.
Yeah,
but...
me too. Me too. Well, as soon as I read that, I was like, what the fuck is prime? An understanding of the primal energy within all things. Okay. But entropy is one of my favorites. Entropy mages were super fun. Which is just the affecting luck, chance, fate, stuff like that. You could kill people in so many fun ways.
So then influence, I would say, by those definitions, would probably be
correspondence.
Entropy.
And entropy, yeah.
Yeah, entropy and correspondence. Because entropy, and we could call it fate, because that's basically what you're doing, is you're messing with fate.
Yep.
And then correspondence to be able to very literally influence somebody else by sending them a message.
The element of connection between apparently different things. Let's actually read some of the examples they have here. Correspondence magic allows powers such as teleportation, seeing into distant areas, levitation, and flying. At higher levels, the mage may also co-locate themselves or even stack different spaces within each other.
God, that game is really broken, and I want to play it now. In our system, I don't think correspondence will be quite that powerful. Same with entropy/fate. I don't think it'll be quite that strong in order to have people that aren't mages be worthwhile.
Like I said, the balancing factor for mages in that game is that if anybody mortal sees you do it, then the universe is going to swat you like a fly with your own power. You need a good
and we can look into that, but I think that's a little high level for sort of the audience that we're targeting with this system.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just so inspired by the open freedom creativity that's given just through just like, here you go, you get control over this. But I think if we just come up with our own 8 categories of like, you can affect this, you can affect this, you can affect this, it'll be fun. Because it's all the freedom. When there's no spells in the magic system, it's all in the player's creativity. That's what I like about this system.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to some bullshit that I wanted to pull, but there just wasn't room for it in the D20 system. And I like this idea.
Excellent. But it is that time where I should have already ordered dinner and I haven't. So it's also time to say, thanks for the efforts today, Rage. We got a lot done.
Yeah, we actually agreed on stuff and got work done. It's pretty good.
We did. And thanks to the audience for hanging out and taking part and joining in and pushing us. And thanks to Pseudo, who had to go, though. But we still miss him. And we'll be back later, probably, to pew pew. And,
probably.
And laugh at silly broken games. Come play with, Zelo. We'll play either Battlefield or Insurgency. I think you've joined us for both, I think. Did you join for Battlefield? Maybe not.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I remember wrong. No, yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I remember. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Lord. Yeah. He did. Excellent. Lord, I am Lord. Lord. Yep. I could be Lord. No problem. So, until a little later, I'm Deus.
And I'm Rage.
May all your shots be headshots.